of the TV that we've watched this week, and let's just call out the elephant in the room, or rather, unfortunately, who's not in the room. Typically, you're seeing three faces on screen, and right now you're only seeing two. Don't you worry. We are, as always, saving Beth for last, and Kate will be on here in just a few minutes, but apparently Mercury is in regalia area or something like that because technology is not working. So I'm on like Padlet, like an iPad kid right now. And I promise to be as juvenile as possible to fit the vibe. Carrie, how are you? How has your like month been? And do you bring any news to us?
I am doing as well as I possibly can. That's not always great or terrible, but at this very moment, it's the best possible. Um, so as far as news, I don't know who wants to break a whole lot of it, but we've got a lot of things we've been hearing. Some Taylor Swift news, which has been fantastic. Um, I tell you, man, that woman goes about her business probably like nobody else, and I'm here for it, man. I really dig it and appreciate it. It's like you guys don't want to do what I need to do or what I want to do in terms of putting out a movie. I'll do it myself, man. She's like Thanos or something.
She
What's
is
the
like
re-
it's so hard to like compare her to literally anybody else because she's in such a league of her own. Not just like in terms of talent, because I do think you have to like separate the talent from like the business acumen there. Because like you can complain about her talent if like because not everything's for everybody, and that's totally fine. But you cannot argue with like her general business acumen and her, you know, choice to release the Eras movie directly to theaters without going through like independent or separate from her production company. I and honestly, a lot of people were complaining about the ticket release, obviously, because everybody in the entire world wants it, and there was wait lines on AMC and whatever. But that ticket release for the movie was way less of a shit show than the release through Ticketmaster for
Mhm.
her actual tour.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about how any of that works, but I'm suspecting in about 5 or 10 years, she has her own version of Ticketmaster. And I'm telling you, she's like Thanos. She's like, I'll just do it myself.
Her next tour, I absolutely agree with you. She's going to like independently release the tickets. I want to tell you something crazy. This is apparently what we look like right now. I'm like not
It's
mad at it.
it's
Uh,
almost like the art for Across the Spider-Verse was like Gwen and Miles when they were sitting on like the roof of the building. So we just sort of head to head. I don't know. It's crazy.
that is crazy. I should follow the directions on screen and rotate my device. But I'm also like not mad at it. Maybe when I bring you back, we'll rotate it and try to do things the right way and like maybe make it worse. I did get tickets for the Eras tour movie, whatever. I'm gonna be going with my sister. I'm so excited about that. And by then I'll have like recovered energy. It's con season right now. We go hard. You know how it is.
So wait, when and where are you going catching on tour?
I won't be seeing the Eras tour. I'll be
Oh,
seeing
the
the Eras tour movie. I should probably caveat that. That's about as good as I'm getting. But yeah, here in Atlanta, got
dig
tickets
it,
to see the movie.
dig it.
So excited.
I can't say that I will be going to see it, but I will not say that I will not see it. So we'll see where it goes.
There is something I do think you'll be watching, or at least I'm going to try to bully you into watching, and that is what I'm super excited for, The Golden Bachelor, which is coming on at the end of September. Now, historically, you've never even entertained the idea of watching Bachelor Bachelorette. You sit back, you smile and nod when we all talk about it, and you go about with self-respect and watch literally anything else. But you saw the promo, didn't you?
I did, and well, I saw this story actually on USA Today, and being a man of a certain age, it's like there comes you sort of like measure your life in milestones, right? And it's like,
Harry's not a
uh,
day over 29, but I'll let him continue.
but it really gets to a point where you start thinking to yourself out loud about like the people that you're attracted to and their ages and that sort of thing. And it's like, yeah, I remember I had a crush on that person and they're 60 or they're
Mm.
65. And I'm like, huh, okay. So I've sort of found, you know how you filling out something and you like, what age range are you in? I know what
Mhm.
age range that I'm in. And so I'm really interested in see what they do with the Golden Bachelor. And I have sort of an added reason. One of the contestants is like from like my hometown. I don't know her or anything, but I saw that. I was like, all right, so now I have somebody to root for.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I've never seen a second of The Bachelor, but I will be watching this.
I'm literally beside myself when we bring Kate on. I'm also gonna try to bully her into watching it. There are some people from, my current state as well, and location aside, all of these women are incredibly beautiful. These are
Mm,
beautiful, talented, funny, accomplished, but very beautiful.
yes. And so, yeah, because here's the thing, because it's like they're real people, and it's like, all right, so you just never know what you get, but like they're real people, but they're beautiful, like and accomplished and all those things. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, this isn't that the kind of stuff, isn't that the kind of foundation for relationships that we sort of all want to see, as opposed to just
Right,
like the youth and flash. So
right.
yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
I completely agree. By the way, I'm sitting over here eating pasta late in the day, like a loser or a winner, depending on your perspective. Well, before we dive into what we've watched this week, let's try to push technology even further and swap you out with Kate. So I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to swap out who's here. We're going to see how this thing works. Here we go. Okay. Now I'm going to see if Kate is able to join. Also, if anybody's watching in the chat, I think I can also push up my boomer glasses, and there she is. There she comes. Kate, you joined just in time. And like the good Gen Z person that you are, you have your screen rotated correctly. I was right about to like send out the like, oh, now's the time to join thing, but you were actually following along and knew when to join. So fantastic. Okay. Tell us what news you've got going on. Stormy in the chat says hi, by the way. Kate in the chat says, I've been laughing about the configuration this whole time. Fair. And let's see what we look like. We look correct. Kate, did you know what to do all
Yay.
along?
You cut out there. What did you say?
Said, did you know what to do all along in terms of video?
Um, I clicked the link. It just worked. I don't know what to tell you.
Gen Z in a nutshell. Tell us what news you bring us this
Uh-huh.
week.
I don't really have much news that wasn't already covered, so I can't really contribute there. Um, but I am excited for us to talk about the kind of stuff we did watch, as well as kind of give a recap of our Dragon Con experience.
Well, that was the news I was hoping you'd bring up.
Oh,
If you
okay.
if you can't tell by the fact that my voice and Kate's voice has potentially seen or spoken better days, we spent the last few days at Dragon Con. We saw a few Arrow favorites, including Kat McNamara and Willa Holland. Now, due to the SAG strike, and Kate and I went to some of the same stuff and some different stuff, but due to the SAG strike, anything that we went to that had like professionals, they couldn't talk about the projects they were working on. So they had to talk about literally anything else. Some highlights of that included, what special skills do you have? Do you prefer fries or tater tots? So I'm not even gonna front. Some of that is like moderately excruciating. But one of the things that we did learn that is relevant to Kate's interests is that Carlos Valdez, who plays Cisco on The Flash, is a fan of Critical Role, as is Kate, as you guys may know. So, Kate, tell me about your highlights from the con. Anybody you saw, anything you learned about any of the shows you watched?
Yeah, so kind of some big highlights I enjoyed was I got to see Adam Savage, kind of a childhood figure in my life, watching uh, um, Mythbusters. Um, I also went to a panel that talked about the science behind D&D, which was really, really good. Um, I also had some not great panels, but isn't that the best kind? I
Oh,
had one
tell us
panel.
about it.
I had one panel where they were talking about historical romances, and it was all women on this panel, and they were all talking about how awful women are. So that was a really great start to that panel. And then I actually had a panel where we talked about Barbie, and I was the only person on the Barbie panel that didn't like play with Barbies or collect Barbies. Um, so I talked about it from a more like um, film only perspective, and then talked about it from an engineering perspective.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I was such a fangirl at Kate's panel, more so than probably any of the celebrity panels that I attended. And it was really fun to hear some of her thoughts as a Gen Z person. So, if Gen Z has Barbie baggage, it's a little different than other generations' Barbie baggage or Barbie pros or Barbie cons. But also some of the things like, well, why at the time that Barbie was originally designed would she have had to like look that way or move that way or that kind of thing. So it was just really interesting. It was so lovely. There were kids in the audience talking about how much they love the movie, including like both little boys and little girls. Everybody was melting. It
Mhm.
was so, so cute. There was a Barbie dance party later where we learned the Dance the Night Away dance. It was so, so cute. We may also have danced the night away, thus our lost voices. It was great. But within this past weekend and also the last several weeks since I've talked to you, because we've had some time off, SAG strike, not much we can
Mhm.
not much entertainment really flowing through right now. Is there anything that you watched? And I specifically want to know if there's any Only Murders in the Building that you watched. And
I
also,
ha-
while you're thinking about that, in the chat, Carrie mentions that he's jealous of us breathing same air as Kat and Willa. They were lovely. Kat, in particular, just like can carry a room. She's such an alpha. And Stormy echoes Kat's best, such a sweetheart. Carrie wants to know, was the engineering perspective the fact that it was really easy to pop Barbie's head off, or was that a boy thing? Carrie, that did not come up, amazingly enough. It had to do with like thigh gaps.
it thigh gaps as well as like dyes, like metal dyes and molds that they would be blow casting, which is the process that that kind of plastic would have to be molded into. And I kind of started talking about it, and I saw the energy in the room go so fast. I was like, I would stop talking about it.
Everybody was in awe. That was what was happening. Also, really love the energy of talking about thigh gaps while I eat the largest plate of pasta you've ever seen. I just feel like that's really just putting good into the universe.
Yeah.
But back to Only Murders in the Building. I'm not expecting you to be caught up, but I do want to know what you think about it so far. If you've watched any episodes, and then with a little bit of movie magic, once we get to the end of your rope, I believe Carrie might be caught up. So I will swap you out with him and we'll probably have our videos oriented in weird boomer directions again, like we do. And we'll talk about the latest episodes of Only Murders in the Building. Okay, go.
Okay. Yeah, I've watched Only Murders. I think I'm on episode. I've gone through episode 5. It's whatever episode all three of them go on dates. They all three have dates. That's the last episode
Yes,
I saw.
that is episode 5, The Joy of Love.
Um, Joy of Love. It's a really good season so far. I am enjoying it. I will say I do think it's interesting that they have kind of repeated some story beats with at least Charles and Mabel.
Hmm.
Especially in that episode. I will also say they've given her a romance every single season, and I am least mad about this one, I think. In fact, I wasn't mad about the other ones. It's more of just like sometimes they weren't really convincing, and I'm suspicious of him for reasons,
Hmm.
but the chemistry is off the charts. I mean, it's
Yes.
ridiculous.
This is
So,
fabulous chemistry. This seems to be like maybe the least ominous one so far, which means it's probably the most ominous one, as you're sort of alluding to. They are real pretty together.
oh yeah.
They are a very aesthetically pleasing couple. Okay, tell me why you think he's bad. Is it because he's too pretty?
No, it's not because he's too pretty. It's because honestly, it's how the show works. They don't do a whole lot of actually giving you clues until that episode. They're really good at like we're gonna throw you clues for you to think this one person, one episode. It's really not like an episode or show that you can Sherlock Holmes your way to an answer.
Hmm.
Instead, you have to metatextually understand how the show works. And it's giving you just enough red flags for you to go, this guy is not in the clear, but him to be still far enough away from suspect one for the episodes. He's lied several times. He's
Yeah.
manipulated the situation, but he's very charming about it and very sweet about
Right.
it. And like, and there's something about how he keeps saying cute that I'm like, I don't trust that. And that could be
Hmm.
the Gen Z in me. That really could be a Gen Z just trigger of, I don't like that word choice.
Hmm.
But other than that, he's super charming and super likable, and they're very pretty together and all of that. But it's because we've had 2 seasons of the show, and I think I understand how it works now, that I'm like, I don't trust you.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think it's a too good to be true kind of thing. He's like in the right
Yeah.
stage of life with her, of her right stage of life as her. He's actively pursuing her, albeit manipulative, in a way, but that's also like kind of like elder millennial, lower Gen X MO type of thing when it comes to guys, I feel. And he's like somebody who commits to the bit in a situation where she says, "Hey, go do this while I talk to whatever," or "Hey, do," like he is amenable to like going with the group, almost to the point where our two older gentlemen are like, "Hey, you're not a part of this. You don't need to be here," at times, which I might be getting into the next episode in alluding to that. But there are some things that just kind of feel a little too good to be true, including his face. I am going to do a little movie magic, swap you out with Carrie. Carrie, if you're listening, go ahead and join on in, and we'll see if Carrie agrees with the sentiment that this is, in fact, too good to be true. One of the things that I'm maybe, I guess I'll say, struggling with when it comes to, there's Carrie. When it comes to Only Murders in the Building in general, is that there's so many places to look. There's so much going on. There's so much of, you've got Meryl Streep and her storyline. You've got, all of our three mains and their separate storylines. You've got an all-star backup cast. With all of this, and also each episode is only 30 minutes. Carrie, how do you feel about the pacing with this much like meaty on-screen work?
I don't know that I have an issue with the pacing because it feels like it sort of adds to what this season is sort of feels like, or at least what they're trying to say in terms of they're all sort of at interesting points and places in their life, and they're sort of being pulled in sort of different directions in terms of whether it's professional, personal relationships, or just like life.
Mhm.
Particularly for Mabel. So it feels like with all these things pulling on them, it feels appropriate that they sort of like reflect that in terms of how many characters we have to deal with, how many plots are sort of up in the air, and it just sort of all feels like it sometimes that like it's unwieldy, right? Which is sort of like what life is like sometimes. And so I think that sort of adds to the plot or the theme of what this season has been about in terms of being pulled in a lot of different directions and what is somebody's true north in terms of what they want to do now, what's important to them, and how they're going to go about getting it. So I think all those things sort of lead to or lend to um, the sort of theme of a little bit of personal chaos that all of our characters are dealing with. So I think that just adds to it.
Well, you mentioned chaos. We see a real quick engagement to Joy and the engagement to Joy break off real fast. Are you rooting for that? Because I'm weirdly rooting for that to work for him. I think we've seen him go through being in love with a killer who's now apparently with the Sue Sylvester stand-in. Like he's been through so much. I would like to see him have some success, even though we know there's also some health problem stuff going on there too, which is another meaty storyline that's going on this season. What are your thoughts?
It's the thing with Joy is I don't want to say it feels like it was doomed from the start, but it feels like it would sort of cheapen her character a bit if they were to really build on their relationship because the most significant part of their relationship basically came during like a the White Room fever dream, right? You asked her to
Mhm.
marry you when you
Has
had
no
no.
memory of doing that.
Exactly. So, I mean, it just feels strange that you'd want to sort of build something really strong and true based off of that. And even if he's come to, which he seemed to have done, to the realization that he really, really wants her, it just feels
Mhm.
like, how can she get over that? And that's pretty tough to sort of hurdle. But to answer your question, I think they would be great together. Um, I'll just be honest, in terms of, and I know Kate was talking about how they generally don't start parsing out like the real clues until they're ready to sort of get into, all right, who really did this? But I'm really getting, spoiler alert here, but I'm starting to get a little bit of Murder on the Orient Express vibes, and I feel like
Yes.
a bunch of people played a role in this, not just one. But on the other side of it, based on the last episode and all of the sort of, particularly the fight and disagreement at the end, I could also argue that it sort of feels like a Civil War type of plot where someone has systematically set up to distract, confuse, and sort of like target our quote unquote heroes to get them off of what they normally do. So I can see it as a group effort or just like some sort of lone Helmet Von Zero sort of situation. I can see both really.
Okay, you said our quote unquote heroes,
Hmm.
quote unquote emphasis there. And you also said this could be a situation where everybody had means, motive, opportunity type of thing. And it could be, everybody was involved in this. So when we're saying everyone, do we mean Charles Oliver and Mabel as well? Because I've been rooting for at least Mabel to potentially be a killer at some point.
Well, to be honest, I think it's only fair that when you're talking about a murder mystery that you don't eliminate anyone until you
Yeah.
actually eliminate them. And all three of them really sort of have legit motives. I mean, obviously um, you have Oliver who obviously wants to sort of bring some notoriety to his production. You have Charles, who's sort of like trying to, even though he says that there was an opportunity to do like Brazos on a Chipotle app or something, it's still an
Hmm.
opportunity for him to be in the limelight. And then you have Mabel, who really, and she's expressed this, sort of really, really needs this, right? So
Hmm.
there's a legitimate reason for all of them to sort of have played some sort of role, whether like behind it all or just a portion of it to sort of keep this moving because it's sort of become who they are and what they do.
Hmm.
So yeah, I could certainly see that. But
And what
if
a good way to up the ante in season 3 as well, where they're trying to find the killer and they all are also a part of it, and then they all figure out that it is also everybody else. Because if we start to realize that they're not really doing their best, we see Oliver wiping the lipstick off the mirror, destroying evidence. We see Charles in several situations doing less than his best in terms of investigation. We see shady things from Mabel. She's almost having to be brought along by Hot Guy to do some investigation at some point because she wants to kind of do it on her own terms, which is her controlling the situation. If we see them do less than their best across the season, that would explain them missing that another person was involved. The fact that they believe themselves to be the killer would allow them to miss that, and it would make for such a good reveal and leave us kind of hanging when it comes to season 4, because if they get away with it in some way, or perhaps they weren't the final killer in some way, it still sets them up in a strange trust place going into season 4 if they did not tell each other that they were the killer.
um, yeah, yeah, and it is that whole thing about it is sort of twofold. It's about who is about can they trust each other and are any of them actually capable of either doing it or are they susceptible to being pulled in ways that would prevent them from solving this murder. Which is
Mhm.
and I know this goes back to like season one, but it's always strange to me how cavalier they are about investigating a murder when that really means that there is a murderer. And certainly we've had murderers who have like targeted particular people. So it's not like a serial killer or something, but it's still someone who has unhinged enough to commit murder. And it's still strange to me how cavalier they are about investigating things, going off on their own, and just sort of like, hello, there is a murderer out there. You might want to be a little bit more cautious, but that's part of the fun too.
The setting of this sort of like haunted-esque theater, which we get into in the latest episode, really, I think sets the tone for keeping things sort of deliriously bright even though they're dark. I think the building did that as well in seasons 1 and 2, but season 3 having another location that still carries that quirky tone. Kate also backs you up in the chat. She says it's definitely multiple guilty parties. One person poisoned, another person pushed him, etc., etc. I could not agree more, and not just because Kate is always right, which she is. While you're here, Carrie, let's just dive into, did you watch anything else this week? Because I think there is something else you're watching that Kate is also watching. Adventures with Superman? My
Yeah,
Adventures with
My
Superman?
Adventures with Superman. They just had their season one finale. It's only 10 episodes. I understand that they may have actually done 20 or planned to do 20, but they decided to sort of stop it at 10. And oh, it's been really. I mean, we're all sort of familiar with like the Superman mythos and the Superman story, whether it's the comic books, the cartoons, the television shows, and the movies. But I really like the fact that even though you get all of the familiar beats of Superman and Lois and Jimmy, it's still found a way to be sort of new and fresh and unique. And even though it's a show that you would think, oh, it's an anime, it's a cartoon, it's like made for kids, they've dealt with some pretty um, deep cut DC stuff already in the first season, and dealt with some pretty significant like adult sort of situations in terms of Lois's relationship with her dad, her relationship with her mom, and the secrets and the hurt and the mistrust that that's caused in like Clark's mystery, because this is one of the we may have seen it before where sort of Clark is still trying to unravel the mystery of who he is and what he's about, but they've sort of leaned into this a little bit more. And so here we are toward the end of the first season, and he still has a lot of questions about who he is and what he's about and what he's capable of. And he's had his faith shaken by some actions that have happened during the season. And Jimmy Olsen, and usually it's easy to see like when you have that trio, it's easy to sort of leave him as sort of the third wheel and not give him a whole lot of narrative things to do. And I thought that that was going to be the situation with this show, but he's obviously an integral part. Humor. He also brings some much needed heart to the show every now and again. So, long story short, it's been freaking fantastic, and I would highly recommend it. And the only thing that sort of bothers me a little bit is that I don't have as big a community to talk with folks about my adventures with Superman as I have with other shows. But fortunately, I found Supergirl podcast, and they talk about it every week, so that's been fun.
Yeah. Is that the Supergirl podcast that Rebecca Johnson
It
does?
is indeed.
I saw
Yeah.
her this weekend
Oh,
at
cool.
Dragon Con.
Oh, that's fantastic.
She was mentioning they're doing that right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
great. Well, speaking of having somebody to talk to about it, I'd like you to play a little game of telephone with me. I
Okay.
want you to ask a question of Kate, and then I'm going to remove you and bring her on to answer it. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but what question would you ask a fellow fan, especially somebody like Kate, who does really good analysis of shows like this? What question would you ask her?
Well, let me ask two because one of them is going to be on the assumption that she's finished season one. So the first question would be absolutely positively, um, how do you think they're going to how what does she want to see particularly in season two? That's obviously one of the questions if she's seen all of episode one. Um, And the second question probably is probably, which and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but which character does she gravitate toward the most and why? Companion to that is who did she probably think that she wouldn't, but has been surprised by what she's seen of them on screen, if that's
You
not
always
enough.
ask really good questions. Now it is time for me to do my little movie magic here. I call it movie magic, but it's actually very clunky. And stage 10 was much easier when it came to transitioning guests. But I'm just going to trust the Kate and Carrie tech gods behind the scenes that they'll pop up at the right time. I will say, when it comes to animated shows, just in general, I think there is actually a way in which sometimes they can be almost more emotionally impactful because when you have the ability to use art, not just humans that have to be directed and humans that bring their own human self with them, but you're using art such that the image only encapsulates the emotions you want to portray. You're not also having to work within a pre-existing, sentient being. I think you can really hit at certain topics and themes and emotions and these like tableau shots that you may not be able to get just out of the actor caliber that would do a limited run Superman thing, whatever. Kate has magically appeared, by the way. Kate, did you catch Carrie's questions in that little game of
I
telephone?
I did, and Carrie, I'm gonna take a guess and say you are gonna be surprised by some of my answers.
Is it
So,
Lois? It's not Lois, is it?
okay, so we'll go to that question first. I I would have naturally assumed Lois because that's like the obvious answer. And let me be clear, her outfits, I wear every single one of those things, and I want her outfits. I want them immediately. Um, I want them so bad. However, I think to be honest, I kind of relate more towards Clark,
Hmm.
and I can't really put a finger on why. However, I have thought a lot about Lois. Um, Lois, they've really gone the route of like leaning into that quote unquote unlikability about her, where she is that very much like, hello, I am in the room, pay attention to me. um I am going to get things done and I want everybody to respect me, to the point of it being like this 23-year-old woman who is still an intern and trying to make her way in, kind of, in being a reporter, and is struggling with that a good bit. And because of that, a lot of times her passion, her drive comes off annoying
Hmm.
and unlikable. Now, as a viewer, I enjoy her, but I can tell that it's an intentional thing that they make her brash and loud and reckless. And I think that's why I relate to Clark so much, is he is kind of always the steady, the let's be cautious about this, let's think things through, let's pay attention to things that are happening around us person, which he doesn't always get to play. And I really enjoy that that's the character side that they're really exploring with this version of him. Um, that because he's still learning about his powers, because he's basically still just like a college graduate in his first job, that he is figuring himself out in a way of like, yeah, I'm a superhero, but also I am a 20 something year old guy trying to make my way in the world. And I like both of that. That's actually a thing I really, really wish they would focus on more with Superman. It's a thing I've really wanted to see them do, and I'm glad they're doing it now. Um, and I think Jimmy's really done well as well. I do think they do lean into him being the lovable, like comedic relief sidekick a little too much. I would like some more genuine heart from him rather than just like he gets left behind by his friends because he's the third wheel. I wish I'd get a little more of some genuine. Just I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for there. Um, but there you could
Like a
have more.
flaw?
Not not really a flaw. like he is the heart of the show, of the trio. I could kind of agree with that because they both just really love him. They both really want to take care of him. But all of his emotional depth is kind of stunted by it's not really there to fuel his story, it's there to fuel the others. And that's
Mhm.
fine. It is the first season, it's a short form television show. It is about Superman. And typically, when you have Superman, you have to explore Lois a little bit. But he does feel like the emotionally stunted of the group.
Mhm.
And if I were to say anything about the story, like the character development in the next season, I wish because for like it's not annoying now, but if this continues, it could get annoying with him being the less dimensional side character. Um,
Harry in the chat, I'll just mention because this is related
mhm,
to what you're saying with Jimmy.
mhm.
He says, I think we'll get real meaty Jimmy stories. Hold on, reloading. In season 2 with his arrangement with the Daily Planet.
It's a great way of phrasing it so it's not spoilery, Carrie. And I agree. I think that's kind of what they're setting up for. Um, it just in this first season it could have been more so, and I will be happy or pleased if they lean more into his own story and his own growth in the second season. And then for like actual storylines, I've really liked what they've done. So you can kind of think back to like Supergirl and some of the other stuff we've seen before. We've seen Cadmus, we've seen Task Force X in certain things, we've seen Suicide Squad, everything else, and it's kind of an amalgamation of all that is the main villain. So this is kind of a spoiler alert, but I'm going to tell you this because I want Cammy to watch the show. Actually, it takes all the good things that like Supergirl did with Cadmus, Task Force X,
Mhm.
the concept of the Suicide Squad without actually using that name, using some of the characters from Suicide Squad, and really tying it all into the concept of like the general and who that is in relation to Lois. And you as a viewer probably know who that is and what's going on, and it makes a really interesting and emotionally charged story without the characters necessarily know what's going on, which is really good.
Mhm.
It also kind of gives like this fresh modern Gen Z sci-fi feel to something that kind of a lot of times feels very I don't know how the best to phrase it, but like kind of an aged villain storyline where
Mhm.
it's none of them seem fresh a lot of times anymore to me. These because they're similar like classic villains, so like from the DC stuff, but they're all in this
Mhm.
new kind of reskin. So there's Banshee and there's uh I don't remember anybody else's name now, but they're all characters we've seen before, just redone into a way that actually seems kind of fresh and new. Um, that
I
compared
mean,
with like the
it does sound interesting to me, like having a storyline that, these are characters you've seen before, but they're told in a new way and also in a new medium. I think
hmm
sometimes I'm resistant to seeing like a recasting if I really loved X version of this character or Y version of this character. But when it's animated, that kind of frees you from that hang up because I haven't super attached to one specific voice actor, one specific art style or whatever. I do want to get a question out to you because it has to do with Emily Bett, and I want to ask it while you're still here. It's in the chat. Stormy says, I'm probably going to be the only one, but I watched Justified miniseries, loved the ending. Fun fact, Walter Goggins is in a movie with Emily Bett, sadly stopped filming because of the strike. Did you watch Justified or are you aware of it? And also, are you familiar with the movie that she's referencing? The one that I think we've talked about it on here before, the boxing situation.
I had not heard of Justified, so I don't know anything about it. But yeah, we've talked about the boxing one, and we've talked about the uh, is it Annie?
Yeah.
No, no, it wasn't Annie.
No, it's like Kill Bill or no,
No, it's mm, Calamity Jane. Got
Calamity
it.
Jane.
Oh, that
And
was
then
bad.
Calamity Jane's husband is Kill Bill or something like that, right? Or
Uh,
I'm
Bill something, and he was supposed to be like momentarily played by Stephen Amell.
yes. And honestly, I don't know if that was just like rumors on the streets at this point. We'll just never know.
We'll never know.
Stormy's
I don't
referencing the
know.
one where Emily played the female wrestler Mildred. And
Mildred.
to your previous point regarding the Adventures with Superman, Carrie echoes, I do like that a lot of our villains are tech based, which plays better in anime and with younger audiences. Well, what I'm going to bring up is the exact opposite of tech based. But I want to bring it up while you're still here because I have one question for you. I have one question for Carrie, and it's about a show neither one of you watched, but I'm going to force you to listen to it. We just started season 2 of the Wheel of Time series. I have not read the book. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you watch the first season, Kate, or did you just put up with me talking about it?
I read the first book and watched the first season.
Mm-hmm. But you did not.
Sometimes I make mistakes.
Okay, so you actually know quite a lot, probably more than me at this point, except for the first 3 episodes of the second season you have not watched. Am I correct about that?
Correct.
Excuse me.
Correct.
Okay. So, is it okay if I spoil them for you? Just a little bit.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a little smidge. Um, this ties into something you were talking about with Lois. You can tell sometimes when there's an attempt to make a character unlikable. I also can tell sometimes when there's an attempt to make a character, especially a woman, unlikable. And we see that occur with a woman in season 3 who is the first of Rand's harem. Now, in order to justify Rand, is she the second? I don't even know. In the show, as far as I can tell, she seems to be the first.
No,
But
it's season 2. You said season 3. It's season 2.
math is so hard. Anyways, me and my last brain cell are out here fighting for our life. This individual, I have not read the books, but I'm well aware that she is bad, evil, no good, very bad. And let me tell you all the ways they do this. Uh, Number one, she just has like classic villain face, which means she is a white brunette woman with prominent like jawline and cheekbones. She wears exactly the kind of like clothes that would be considered villainous, where it's like just a little too sexy, like just a little too low in the front, but not super clingy, where it looks like she's trying to look sexual, but she is not like actually presented to us as sexy. So, not like if you think of Witcher, Yennefer's dress for that ball, it started 1,000 Wars type of thing. Like, it's just like not that kind of sexy, but like the wrong kind of sexy. They have just like a lot of like bizarrely like borderline violent sex scenes. So obviously we're not going to like her because women have to be punished for that kind of thing. And there's moments where Rand like just is kind of an ass to her, like ditches her at a party at one point, and she's like, "What? Why are you gonna leave me here? You're gonna miss the fireworks." Like basically just showing like she's not heartbroken, but she's more just like mildly pissed. And we want women to be heartbroken and crying and not like mildly pissed. And just in general, her reactions to things that like could warrant a reaction, she'll just be like chill girl about it. And obviously, chill girl is evil. So I think you can tell from my prelude here, my particular feelings on this topic. But my question for you is, knowing what you know about how much everybody involved in this series needs therapy, what do you expect to see for them to create likable women? Because it is very clear what they're doing in order to create unlikable women.
Nothing. To be honest, I read the first book. I think that's about the same thing that happens in the first show. I can't even remember. I honestly barely finished the book. Kind of
Oh
made
yeah,
my
they
way
tried
through
to
the
make Egwene
show.
unlikable in the first season, didn't they? Forgot about that. Trauma blocked it.
Yeah, they try to make all of the female characters unlikable. Honestly, to be honest, I can't remember anybody's name. The only character that came out likable to me was the gentle giant,
Mm,
whatever his name
Perrin.
was.
Yeah.
Yep, it was,
Notably not
and
a
then
woman, however.
notably not a woman. And then whoever Rosamund Pike and her lover question mark, I
Moraine
liked
and
them, but
Land.
they weren't. yeah, I liked them. They weren't supposed to be likable, or they weren't written likable, but I liked them. But everybody else could
Mhm.
go pound sand. I didn't like anybody else.
With Moraine, I feel like they start season 2 doing things that would typically make a character unlikable, but she's just so good. Like, number 1, Imma like her anyways because that's just who I am, but number 2, I feel like the general audience would still like her despite that because she is able to effectively communicate like, "Oh, okay, I'm doing this like harsh thing, but I'm showing the conflict in doing it and I'm showing that it may be like a difficult for me or a sacrifice for me to do that, so we can kind of like forgive her because she's good at, showing vulnerability underneath her strength. And or if anybody does dislike her, I block them out entirely. But that was my question for you just in general of like what is the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to these women because it seems like the only thing they do to make women likable is put them through shit, generally just like make them be like abused or mistreated by whatever like guys around them or girls are around them for that matter, have them suffer like the loss of everyone near and dear to them. You gave Perrin as the example, notably in the first episode of the first season. Perrin loses his wife or fiance or whatever that situation was. So everybody going through this, pretty much except Rand, if they are meant to be likable, they go through absolute shit. Rand really hasn't gone through shit this season. I know we're going to be told that he's had a very rough time being the most special boy in the entire world, and it's been really, really hard on him. Being the person to sleep with hot evil villain lady, and it's just so so sad and we should just feel so so bad, and I won't, but the really especially when we see this in episode 3, Nynaeve, which is I think she has like healer abilities plus like a bunch of other abilities. Nynaeve is really the one who's going through it this season, and what they're doing with her in order to make her likable is have her really go through it, like essentially no spoilers, but putting her through like emotional loss situations that are like beyond what the mind can comprehend type of thing. So I'm like, great, fantastic. This is just a case of like, if we abuse this woman and she goes through an awful time, she's good. And if she is generally not abused, is not breaking down crying at a party, and enjoys sex, then she's bad. So that dichotomy is interesting. I will bring Carrie on for the question for the boys. This is Carrie's cue to pop back on. In the meantime, my cat has taken up residence right next to me and is being very loud. I'm not sure if you can hear. The thing with Wheel of Time as well, when it comes to treatment of women and treatment of guys, the treatment of women is all the same. It all falls on that general dichotomy of woman who is happy is bad, woman who is not happy and is super sad is good. Woman crying, very good. Women being happy or enjoying anything, super, super bad. Women fall in that dichotomy, but men don't directly fall on that dichotomy. They are allowed to be somewhat layered creatures in a way, just somewhat, just somewhat. So, my question for you, Carrie. Well, first of all, you never watched Wheel of Time or read the books. Is that correct?
Nope, but I was Googling as much as I could while you were talking, so I no, I have not seen
If
it
you've
though.
watched any show or read any book where there's like the chosen one and he's the most special boy in the world because plot reasons and everybody needs to love him and think he's so so cool, then you're familiar with the premise of Wheel of Time. Just take it and like just like a lot of things that you'd need therapy for, or like if somebody needed therapy but then they wrote this book instead, like that kind of stuff. Anyways, my question for you, what do you actually look for in a good chosen one? So if we accept like a cheesy premise wherein like you are born to be the dragon who runs the wheel and controls time and you're the most special, like you we're already accepting this like chosen one stuff. What do you look for in a good chosen one character? And let's just assume he's male because he is.
Wow, that's a really, really interesting question. Well, personality wise, I need someone who is, for whatever reason, at least interesting, right? Because when you have a show about someone who's the chosen one, there's obviously got to be some hurdle that he has to overcome or she has to overcome, and there has to be some reluctance on the part of this chosen one, right? And so
Mhm.
what you don't want to deal with is while this person is being reluctant or being immature or whatever the case may be, you don't want to totally hate them, right?
Mhm.
You at least want to understand why it is that they're acting the way that they are. So you need them because they're going to be on screen, and I need them to at least be interesting, even if I'm infuriated by the initial part of it that they are not immediately accepting their destiny like everyone wants them to, right? So that's absolutely part of it. The other thing is what I would appreciate or what I do appreciate about characters who are quote unquote the chosen one is sort of like clearly defining and having a really good thing of what they're fighting for, right? Because it could be,
Mm.
hey, I'm the chosen one and I have to save the world or whatever the case may be. But it's really important to know what their world looks like, what their world consists of, what it's like, hey, I'm trying to save the world, but everyone's world is like it's really small, right? It's like what do you care about? Who do you care about? What are the things that are important to you? So and I know this isn't as clear as it probably needs to be, but to answer your question, I need someone who's interesting, even when they're doing infuriating things. I still want to watch them, and I need them to sort of have sort of this world that they're saving that like is intriguing and not just hey I need to save the world because I'm on this planet and we need to save it. It's like why do you want to save it? What do you want it to be? And I know this isn't the question you asked, but it sort of goes to what the issue that I have with quote unquote most heroes or most people in that situation, right? Is that they want to save the world and then it's like well then what, okay you saved the world, do you also want to make it better and how do you want to make it better and what do you want to do, right? So it's really and that sort of goes to what I want to see in terms of this person in terms of what their world looks like and why they want to be the chosen one, because the question is well what do you want to do with this power or this ability once you have it other than just to basically restore the status quo. I mean that's no fun. What do you really want to do? What does this place need to look like? So maybe kind of sort of I answer your question. I don't know. We'll see.
Love that because it really hits on what I think I'm missing most from Rand, the chosen one, the special boy in this story. And I say boy, he's a fully grown adult. He really should be more interesting than he is. It's not just that he's boring, and he is in fact painfully boring, completely lacks charisma. I really thought like maybe part of this, I really thought I was being shallow in season 1 because I did not find him attractive in season 1. He was very much like very like ginger, curly red hair, looks like a little orphan boy type of thing. And again, like an adult, but still like there were just this like a boyishness and like this, redheaded stepchild energy that I just didn't find attractive. Well, to give him one compliment in season 2, they like gave him like a little glow up, like he looks a little better now. They shaved off the hair and he looks like a little more chiseled, whatever. And now he looks like your standard, like, video game generate default main character kind of guy. So he looks fine. And now I know I'm not shallow because I still don't like him. And it's not just that he's boring, it's also that I literally don't know what he's trying to accomplish here. And he is so wishy washy. Like when we talk about, this hot evil girl, which is the literal only interesting thing about his entire storyline, he'll say one thing and she'll be like, "Oh no, we should do this instead," and then he'll just like go along with it or just like grunt and not protest type of thing. Like just super wishy washy, easily controlled by women, very easily controlled by women. And I have no idea what his like agenda is. Like if you're running for mayor, governor, president, leader of the entire global planet and all that is controlled by time, whatever. Like, can I at least get like a 5-point plan on what your agenda is here? Like, we don't get a vote because he was like born into it. This is very much like you inherited this like dragon royal lineage or some bullshit type of thing. But as an audience member, I would be more invested if I knew I was like actually rooting for or against his agenda. I'm rooting against him on principle right now because I don't like him. But if he had agenda points, then I can find a reason to root against them or root for them in some way. But I can't. So, and I'm sorry, I
Well,
know we went overtime, but I really liked your answer.
well, I had two things that I just thought about while you were talking, and while I thought about it a little bit more. If you got a quick second.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about when we talk about the chosen one, you have obviously like Neo from the Matrix comes to mind, right? And one of the better things about Neo from the Matrix is he was boring, right? As most chosen ones have to be because things have to happen around them before they ultimately take action, right? But what I appreciated about his chosen one was that for the most part he was basically considered like just a normal, ordinary nobody, right? And so if one of the better things about a chosen one is sort of the aspect of it can be anyone, right? And
Hmm.
so I think that's compelling to people because it has them believe, well, I don't have to be the chosen one, but I can do significant things even though I'm not coming from a significant place. So I like that aspect of the chosen one. And the other
The
version is
Star
sort of,
Wars
yeah,
premise.
exactly. The other version is sort of the cad or the callous person who's like, nah, I don't need to be the chosen one. I don't care about anything or this, that, and the other. You think of like the quote unquote billionaire playboy or whatever the case may be. It's
Hmm.
like, I don't really have to care, but they're
Hmm.
interesting on screen and you know that they have the capability is just what's going to trigger that, right? So I
Right.
like watching that aspect of the chosen one also.
Hmm. If he was either one of those two things, I'm not saying I would like him, but I would be like less ready to prey on his downfall. As it stands, it's just like I could list every single character that's ever had more than 30 seconds of screen time on this show and actively like them better than I like him. To the point where I almost wonder, like, was that the point? Was the point that chosen ones are like boring and unlikable and it's everybody else who does literally everything else that is actually what makes a story move forward and makes the wheel turn and makes whatever. I don't know, I'm guessing that's not going to be the moral in the end, but for now that's about as much as I've got that I can use to excuse this kind of behavior. Kate in the chat said Rand is milquetoast. Did I say that right? I understand what the word means, but I might be
Yeah.
pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah, milk toast sounds right.
He also points out this is essentially the difference between Harry and Hermione. Yet another franchise that I have wild, unpopular opinions that I can brandish about without necessarily knowing everything I'm talking about. Thank you for staying 7 minutes overtime with me. Thank you for putting up with this weird technology that has us facing different directions. Although I'm like kind of not mad about it. It's like a little abstract art esque. I will see you all in 2 weeks. No, I won't. I will not be in the country. I will see you all in a month because we'll have to skip our next one. And by that point, I think we will be back to being able to at least have three faces on screen, the same direction, unless somebody wants to be sideways. And I fully support it if so, because that's, again, kind of a vibe. I'm going to put
Sideways
Kate
is
and
one of my
Carrie's
favorite
information in
movies.
the description.
Sideways is one of my favorite movies. Paul
Yes.
Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church, Virginia Madsen, if I'm not mistaken. Sandra Oh, great movie. I highly recommend.
Anything of Sandra Oh, I'm sold. Killing Eve was such a vibe.
Mm.
I'm going to put Kate and Carrie's information in the description below so you can go fight with them about their opinions on things. You can also fight with me if you want, and I will see you all in a month this time. Maybe the SAG strike will be resolved. Maybe we'll have TV again. We'll see. Bye. Okay, now I gotta figure out how to end this in an entirely different environment. Let's see.